I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit.
All right, today on the show, the headline story is going to be the Porsche 911 ST that Hannah drove last week, so she's going to tell us all about it. We're also going to talk about the Tesla recalls, which I think are fascinating for a couple of reasons. I normally think recalls get too much attention, but this one I think is really interesting. And because it's kind of Tesla, they made the Cybertruck, it ties into the Lightning story. The Ford Lightning story I think is fascinating, so we're going to talk about that with the Tesla story. And finally, we're going to talk about the seeming slowdown of EV demand is told through the Geely story that a great writer for us in Berlin wrote an opinion piece about. Chris Bryant is always on top of these car stories for opinion from a financial perspective. And also, Geely has built this massive empire that some of them I didn't even know about.
I know. It's really interesting.
So a Chinese billionaire owns at least one brand that you probably want because he has so many. So let's kick it off with the 911 story, though, Hannah.
Yeah. Here's the top note. Here's the headline.
How many different 911s are there, by the way?
There are currently 26 there are 26 versions of the 992, the current generation.
Just so many levels of trim. It's insane.
I know. It's really difficult to keep straight. There are 26 for sale, and there are a couple others that are not currently available, but also in the same generation. So it's quite a lot. And it is like, we've spoken about the ST. Obviously, I was a little bit skeptical. Like, do we really need another one? It's not even based on a real car that existed. But it
still is at the top. It's like the upper echelon of 911s.
Yes, this is the $292,000 911. It's extremely lightweight. And really, here's what you need to know. I loved it. And I was skeptical because of all the reasons we're discussing. Like, we don't need another one. It's going to be just like all the rest. Why do you need another this and then that? I loved it. It was so fun.
I mean, even if we don't need something.
Yes.
Even if we don't need this 911, but it's one of the best 911s Porsche has ever built, I'm going to guess after you drive it, you're going to love it.
Yes, but I can say this too. I've driven, most of the variants. I haven't driven all 26 of them, but, if you compare it to a GT3 or like a 992 Turbo S, I would say still that I would prefer this at least over the GT3 and even the GT3 Touring. And there are a couple reasons for that. The thing that I think anyone who gets in the car will notice right away is that it's a manual, obviously, but it's got a super short throw on the shifter. So it's 6 gears, super short, super quick, super punchy. It just feels a lot more engaging when you drive it, if that's what you want, but it's not so raw that it feels like a track car. This is not a track car. It doesn't come with a roll cage.
It's like a sweet spot.
That's the thing. Yeah. It is the sweet spot because I do think the GT3, it's honestly best left on the track. I think I don't want to drive a GT3 every day, all day. It's just like, it's just a lot.
Even a Touring, I wouldn't want to.
Right, exactly. But the ST really, it feels analog, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, you feel that you're engaged with the car. It's a little bit louder than a GT3. I actually was in a lead car for a moment that was a GT3 and then got back in the ST. And it was noticeable right away that the ST is a louder car.
By the way, that's what you want. That's what the weekend warrior wants.
Exactly.
And on a track, a lot of times there are noise limits.
Exactly.
I know for motorcycles on a track, people have to put in noise dB killers.
Yeah.
But on the street, if I'm riding through Westchester, I want it to be as loud as I can.
Yeah, and I don't even think that was on purpose. That's a byproduct of the fact that they really did to try to lighten it up quite a bit. Even they put in special lightweight carpet that saved 4 pounds. And, obviously carpeting helps muffle sound. So some of it's just a natural result of making the car lighter.
There's no sound deadening material.
Exactly.
I mean, there's not in the GT3 either. but they probably have purposely made the exhaust quieter to meet noise restrictions. Whereas with this, they have high flow cats and probably like basically straight pipes on.
Yeah, and man, I was in that car for like 8 hours. It was a very long day of. We started in Napa and then drove through the redwoods, up the coast, up the 101, ended up in Mendocino. So and it was partially rainy. We saw sun. So there was a good variety of terrain in a way. I do think, and we were even on the interstate for a while too. I do think it's sometimes when you are on a straight interstate, you almost want a seventh gear. It's really fun on curvy, windy roads. You end up shifting through the gears really quickly.
Yep.
If you don't like that, if you kind of prefer a longer gear, this is not the car for you. This is one that you're going to be going up and down a lot. If you're just going to be driving on interstate most of the time, you're going to want a seventh gear, and this car doesn't have it. So,
True of the GT3 as well. The funny thing is, in my Carrera, I had a 991 1S, and I always felt like, why do I have a seventh gear? I don't need this. But then my buddy, I would always drive his GT3 Touring, and I would be like, you need a seventh gear.
Well, that's where you really feel it. I mean, it kind of depends on what kind of driving you want to do. The other thing that I thought was interesting was the fact that it comes with a watch. I know you're a watch guy. This is the accompanying $13,000 Porsche design watch that goes with the car that you cannot get unless you also take the car. Now, to me, the watch is very cheesy, but a
lot of people don't like Porsche design. It's pretty specific.
Right. It's very specific.
Very German. It reminds me of the Sprockets skit on SNL that they used to do. Sprockets.
Yes.
Touch my monkey.
I'm not familiar with that one, I must say. I must not have been born yet.
That's possible.
But, yeah. The thing is, I've heard some, rumblings that dealers are saying, well, you can't get an allocation unless you commit to also buy the watch. I don't know if that's true.
Weird.
Yeah. Or just, some pressure or leaning on people to take the watch too.
That's strange.
Yeah. I mean, which would kind of feel like an upsell a bit.
Right.
But I have to say, it's such a fun car. I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, how it looks. It really does. There's a channeled roof on it. There is a gurney flap on the end, but it's real small. I do like that it doesn't have a huge spoiler. The air intake on the front and side, it looks specific and unique, but not flashy, which I thought was really cool. I was in the Ruby Stone or Ruby Star, depending on how you want to say it, red, which was a super cool color.
I do not like that color.
Really? Oh.
I had the Carrera T in that color.
That car, just that color alone, if you try to resell it, it pushes the value up.
It's like a Barbie, a little bit slightly darker Barbie
It's a raspberry.
Pink.
It's a raspberry pink and a pinstripe interior, which sounds really bad on paper, but it did look kind of cool. But
do you know what it is? Part of this, I think, is that I was just at lunch with the guys who run Mecum Auctions, and they're doing a massive event in Kissimmee at the beginning of January, 4,500 cars, and a lot of it's American muscle, right? Mm-hmm. They do have some Ferraris, but it's mostly American muscle. And I asked them about, recent model cars that sell well, and also resto mods that do well. And obviously something like a Ford GT is going to sell well. And they said like a Singer will just off the charts, right?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And they sell for more than
And Porsche's leaving so much money on the table, which is why they have to do like the 911R or the ST, because this is... They're doing Singer before Singer gets a hold of it, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they do watch Singer very closely and have observed that exact effect, which reminds me of, the special heritage livery with the number 63 on the side. Why
is that 63?
So that was the first year of the 911. Of course, they're going to make 1,963 of them. But my point with this package is that alone is a $20,000 upgrade as well. So to your point, Matt, they're just, Porsche is offering more and more options to make the cars super specific to yourself and spend more money.
By the way, Lamborghini also uses the 63 on some of their special liveries, and that's because it was the year they showed their first sports car. So,
Glory days.
Yeah,
right?
I guess 63 was a good year.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, there's going to be a 63 Ferrari at the Kissimmee auction, Ferris Bueller car that's going to go for 16 to 18. There's a 67 275 Spider that's going to go for, they think, 25 or more. And there's a 64 275 GTB that they think will go for more than 35.
Where are they expecting these buyers to come from? Because let's be honest, Mecum auctions are not known for their Ferrari sales. They do volume,
right.
American.
They will have 10 Ferraris that they say are worth over $100 million. Just the 10.
They say.
But I don't know where I guess if you want this kind of Ferrari, you don't really care as much who's selling it, right?
I mean, you do.
If you're in the market for this, don't you? You know who it's coming from. So, like, say you're, I don't know, David Lee, and you know that Jay Leno is selling his Ferrari. You're going to go buy it from him, whether he does it through Bonhams or Barrett Jackson.
But I think very significantly, this isn't Jay Leno's Ferrari. I think what I mean is, that caliber of Ferrari would not be sold at a Mecum auction, and this is not a mark against Mecum at all. I just think in general, and I'm not familiar with the cars
Ferrari,
that they told you. If you do have that, if you do have really that caliber of Ferrari, you would probably tend to go to Sotheby's or Gooding.
They know that too.
Yeah, I think it's not a knock on them at all. People have specialties.
Well, I think they might be trying to move into that area because they're so focused. They will be so focused on the Ferraris. Anyway, I don't want to get too drawn away from the ST. I think it's so cool that they're making this, which most people aren't going to be able to afford it. Even people who can go pick up a 911 aren't going to be able to really afford or make financial sense of the ST. But you have to have something in that price area because Singers are only a couple $100,000 more, right?
Yes.
And then it's even cooler and even more exclusive. My favorite of all of the different, I guess, trim levels would be, because I live here in New York, and I don't know how the roads are in LA, but they're bad here.
They're really bad in LA too.
The Dakar, I think, is so great, but I just wish instead of the turbocharged 3-liter, they would put the same motor that they use in the GT3 or in this, and I don't know why. Maybe it's...
You know what? This is another thing I wanted to say about the ST. This 4-liter engine is the same one that they've had for over a decade that they've used. And, every year they're getting incremental bits more power out of it, 5% here and there. But
how much does the ST horsepower?
I think it's 518. But I do wonder, is this sort of the topping out of what they can do on that particular 4-liter, especially with emissions? Because this, I don't see big jumps in what they're getting out of that power plant in general, but the engine specifically. That was something I was thinking.
They do tend to make, like, at the end of a generation of cars, they'll make like the
crowning glory.
Exactly.
Yes. This feels a little bit like that.
That's interesting.
And then that now makes me think, we've talked a little bit about what is the car market going to be for internal combustion cars if at some point you can't really buy them new? Does that make them valuable? And yet again, this plays into your whole plan with some of the cars that you want to get.
Right. Like the BMW. Right. I want to get the last V12 they made, the M760. By the way, my wife is on board again.
Oh, great. Okay.
So,
thank God.
I think I'm moving in that direction.
Okay. What a relief.
And that's one that's like my Dodge Challenger with a 6.4-liter V8. That's going to be very much not made anymore. But they sell 50,000 of those a year. I don't think it's going to appreciate in value.
No, probably not.
But the 12-cylinder BMW maybe, because they don't make that many of them. On the other hand, I've looked back at previous generations of the 7 Series, the V12s, and you can pick them up for like 10 or 15,000.
Yeah. I mean, even 1963 as a production run, it's not that rare. Going back to the Ferraris, when there are 2 or 3 or 4 of them that were ever made, or even 100, they're going to make 200 of the Bugatti Chiron, whatever.
Right.
That's actual rarity. But almost 2,000 of something, to me, isn't ultra rare.
No, not at all.
It's limited, but it's not ultra rare. And I did ask Porsche, are you guys sold out? What are the allocations looking like? And the answer was, it's a bit of a rolling thing. And
so the answer, sold out.
Right.
Because if they were sold out, they would say, "Yeah, we sold out the day after we announced it."
Yeah, if you want one, you
1963 is a lot. I feel like a limited edition normally, and in the motorcycle world, it's usually like 400.
Right.
Right.
And
sometimes times they'll make like 50.
Yeah.
If Lamborghini puts out a limited edition, they'll have like 5.
Yeah.
Or the Rolls Royce.
Sure.
Wasn't there like a $30 million Rolls Royce that like Jay-Z got, a boat tail or something?
Yes. There's like the boat tail, the drop tail, and the other one.
By the way, I brought up with the Meekum guys because I'm like, Hannah's always talking about the $60 million Ferraris and there's never a $60 million CUDA. And they said,
oh yeah, good. What'd they say?
They said, true, but there are a lot of $3 or $4 million CUDAs, and remember that they made 100,000 of those. They made 200,000 of those.
That's a good argument, actually. So why are those ones in particular so expensive when there's so many?
Well, they're different trim levels that make it like 1 of 1 or 1 of 3, or I don't know.
Were those aftermarket, or those are from the factory? Factory trim levels.
Factory, yeah. Okay. It's the resto mods don't go for that much unless it's a singer, right? Unless it's somebody who really knows what she or he is doing. Let's talk about Teslas. So there's recalls all the time.
Yeah.
Every car maker
like every
has
week.
Recalls, and Bloomberg goes crazy and flashes headline, and the stock will move on the day because investors have no idea that it's a common thing. But this Tesla recall, I think, is more interesting than the traditional, like, there's a screw loose on your right rear, brake caliper.
The steering wheel might come off at any moment in time.
So this is what their autopilot driving feature, which they've touted and pushed so much. I think they charge extra for it on certain cars as well.
Yeah, and it's not even their like driver level 2. It's not even their autonomous. It's
you can't
just
take your hands off the wheel.
It's not even like close to what Mercedes has done, for instance.
Yeah. But they've had to fix it because NHTSA has done a years-long investigation on whether or not they've done enough to ensure the driver is paying attention. And I guess NHTSA's decided they haven't done that. And now Tesla is doing this recall. But I think it's so cool because it's a huge recall, right? Isn't it?
2 million.
2 million cars.
2 million cars.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool because usually a recall is a giant pain in the butt for the consumer and
go to the dealer.
Manufacturer because you have to go to the dealer. This is over the air.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I will 100% give Tesla that. That's great. Can you imagine the pandemonium if people had to go down to the dealership and get...
usually what happens is people don't do it. Right?
I mean, LA would shut down because half of LA is Tesla. So we would, which would be kind of great because then traffic would be a lot better.
Also, this is a recall that I don't want as a Tesla owner. Why do I want something that's going to make me pay attention more? It's going to ding more? It's going to flash more?
I guess is there no consequence for not having your car I know you have to actually opt in, push the button on the screen that accepts the
but you
update.
have to have your hands on the wheel, and if you take your hands off the wheel for too long, most systems realize that and will say like, okay, autopilot is off. Now, I don't know specifically how it works in the Tesla, but what they want to do is like make it harder for you to cheat the system.
I understand that. I mean, in order to accept the software update for the recall, you do have to actually push a button to accept and to initiate and accept the recall. Right. So if you don't do that, what's the consequence?
If you don't do that, then you can't get any updates. But after that, without having done that. And eventually they're going to come out.
It's like your cell phone.
Right. So exactly. It's like a new iOS.
Because I'm like many updates behind on my cell phone, let's be honest.
And you know that when you do the update, like your alarm won't go off.
Oh, yeah. It ruins everything. It ruins everything. That's why I haven't done it.
Right. But you have to eventually because you want your camera to work better.
And then emojis start looking weird and that bugs me. So, yeah.
So this recall, I think, is mildly interesting because of that. But
it is, and I will say, just on that topic, it's interesting because Tesla makes such a big deal about this kind of technology, and like the very thing that they always brag about is the thing that they're now having to adjust.
Right.
So that's like, because in the end, you're right. Honestly, it's not a big deal. You just do the software update and then it's fine. But it is kind of a big deal because this is like one of their main selling points about how amazing.
Also, I hesitate to say anything bad about Teslas for two reasons. Number one, most importantly, I don't really know very much about Teslas. I haven't driven very many, and I have definitely not spent time with really anybody who's obsessed. So I don't know much about it.
Well, we should, Tesla, if you're listening, send us someone.
Yeah, we really should.
Yeah.
Number two, I hesitate to say anything because they're so passionate, right? The Tesla.
Well, I don't know if that's the word I would use. I would say you don't want to get doxxed.
Right. I don't want any of that to happen.
And you don't want the cult members coming after you because I have experienced some of that myself. And there is something primal of the Tesla enthusiast, and I use that word generously, where if you dare to say something critical about a Tesla vehicle, it's as if you've questioned their identity, their manhood, their very intelligence as a
really
human.
Weird.
And the response is visceral and way out of proportion to whatever perceived infraction has happened. And that to me is a bit weird.
It is, but that is how it is, which is why. Because I would say I think BMW has a much better self-driving system, but I'm not going to say that because they'll kill me.
Yeah, well, it's just you and me talking, so don't worry.
I was talking to the CEO of the North American CEO of BMW a couple of days ago, and he was like, "Yo, I take my hands off the wheel. Right, the only thing I have to be doing is watching."
Yeah, of course. That's level 3. That they have. BMW has that in Germany currently. Mercedes has it in the United States. I've driven it. I've used level 3. It's wonderful. You can watch videos.
It's fantastic.
It's very relaxing. Yes.
I think that's interesting, but I'm sure that Tesla. I just don't know enough about Tesla's systems because I'm sure you can cheat them as well. Otherwise, people wouldn't be able to sleep.
Of course.
And have horrible accidents. By the way, the NHTSA investigation is because of at least 50 accidents that they say were caused by autopilot. That's a little bit scary, right? Do you shift into autopilot with no hesitation at all in other cars?
I don't even use cruise control, if I'm honest.
Okay.
But yes, when I'm forced to, if I'm in a press car and I need to actually try something or test something, I'm not worried. I'm not worried because I feel that you can override it. But I don't even like the nannies that keep you in your lane.
Right.
They just, to me, it's actually less safe because when I need to make a quick move and I'm feeling resistance on the steering wheel or pre-braking, it feels like you're out of control of the car, and that's not a good feeling. As a driver, I want to feel like I'm in control.
I only use it on long Autobahn drives. Yeah. I'll set it and forget it, or if I were doing cross country drive in the U.S. But if I have my wife and kids in the car, I was in the Escalade V, and I had my wife and baby in the back, and of course, it has
Super Cruise. Yes.
I love it. But I said it, and my wife's like, no, you don't.
Oh, she doesn't want you.
No.
Oh, interesting.
Not allowed.
Well, I remember I used Super Cruise last in the electric Hummer, and it made me miss my exit and get off because I was so relaxed that I just I didn't get off the freeway, and I was like, oh, but for me, it's scary how quickly I get very relaxed using that stuff.
I miss exits when I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Ford Lightning production cut, because I think this is the most interesting story in a long time in the automotive sort of industry, because it's just one more sign that there's not as much EV demand as we may have thought there was going to be. Ford was going to lose $3 billion on EVs this year. Then they said they're going to lose $4.5 billion on EVs this year. The Lightning was, their electric F-150. There were hundreds of thousands of reservations for it, right?
Well, it's the best-selling. The F-150 is the best-selling car in the United States.
But you just would have thought, when I heard they're going to cut production in half from 3,200 a week to 1,600 a week, I thought, but surely there are people that are waiting 2 years to get an F-150 Lightning.
It doesn't, and honestly, to me, doesn't make sense. And then, I see the executive saying, we're not worried. We're adjusting to output and demand. It kind of doesn't make sense. I don't really believe them when they say this is just a natural adjustment and we're not worried, especially when Jim Farley has said he wants to focus on ICE and hybrids for trucks.
Yeah.
So
the hybrid
let's read
story.
the writing on the wall.
Toyota looks so smart right now.
I know.
Everybody else rushed to do EVs in a major crazy way, and Toyota's like, "No, we'll stick with our boring Prius hybrids."
I know, and I know I've been very sort of hybrids are not the way in our podcasting relationship since day one. But I do admit, I'm slowly kind of seeing. Wow, it's not like I have an opinion either way, but what I'm observing is maybe hybrids are coming back around.
I have an opinion.
Yeah.
Hybrids are the way forward. It's so smack you in the face obvious. If you want to be green around town, you just leave it on the battery power only. And then when you're doing a real trip, there's no need for range anxiety because you have a motor. It makes total sense to me.
Mm-hmm. But they're heavy. They're heavy.
I like a heavy car. I like a heavy bike. There's a place in my life for light vehicles. My neighbor has an M2. I love to cane it around the Bronx River.
Great looking car. I kind of like them. They're cool.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
But I like a big, heavy cruiser. I like a land yacht that I can pilot. I mean, I had a 911, but I also really enjoyed driving my G-Class for a while.
We should discuss. I had forgotten you had a G-Wagon.
Yeah, it was awesome.
What year and what color?
It was the culmination of like 40 years of wanting.
Yeah, that's so cool.
I got a 2020 G500 in emerald green.
This was when you were in Berlin?
Yes.
So cool. That is
fantastic
such
vehicle.
an icon. I could talk about that forever. It's so unapologetic. It's a diamond.
I also think the color, emerald green,
that's cool.
Schmaragd Grün, it's so great because everybody thinks it's black until it's a very sunny day.
Yeah.
And then they realize. No, my point is hybrids are the way forward. I've been saying forever. Now I talked to Keith Naughton, our Ford reporter in Detroit. He told me the time to turnaround or whatever, the metric that measures how long a car sits on a dealer's lot before it sells.
Sure. Uh-huh.
In full EVs, it's 51 days.
Oh.
Regular cars, ICE engines, 43 days. Hybrids, 18.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So they fly off the lots.
That's telling. It's better than the housing market right now.
Yeah. Well, there are some for sale, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of them obviously are like Toyotas. If you want a RAV4 hybrid,
you're
going to have to look.
Here's a question for you that just came into my mind. Now, I did listen to your interview with the head of BMW, and he's saying they're not slowing down on anything. The i7, all of their iCars are full speed ahead. They're not adjusting anything.
Yep.
So my question to you is, do you think there is going to be a divide between luxury and premium EVs and mass market EVs?
Well, one of the points that Keith made to me when I was talking to him about EV demand is it's not because people necessarily don't want EVs.
Yeah.
They do. Some people want EVs. There are compromises to be made.
Yeah.
You obviously need to figure out if you're going on a trip where the charging ports are. If you keep it at home, you're going to want to install something.
It's
inconvenient.
Yes.
So you're willing to do that, but you're not willing to do the inconvenient thing and pay $85,000.
It's a bridge too
for a
far.
family truck.
It's
Exactly.
really
so
a bridge too
the thing
far.
about BMW that I think is interesting is the iX, which is their $80,000 plus EV SUV. That's not flying off lots.
No, and I kind of liked it when I drove it.
Right, I love it,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
thought
too
it was
expensive.
Great. I know
it's great.
I think I even said that.
Meanwhile, the i4, which is considerably more affordable, that's flying off lots.
Yeah.
So the cool thing about the BMW picture is they're selling sedans, even the EV sedans, more than they are selling SUVs. In the last quarter, they had growth in the car segment, and they had a 10% drop in the SUV segment, which is so telling.
That's backward. That's very backward.
Exactly. BMW has the coolest electric sedans. They have the i4, now the i5. They have the i7, which is
big fan
beast. And
we need a new.
Some of them are not
i8.
attractive, though. The i7 and the iX, I think, are horribly.
I'm gonna stand with my i7. Looks okay in certain colors.
I don't like the squinty eyes at all. Don't like
Oh,
it. They did it right on
that's
the
your
X7,
thing.
not on the i7.
I do kind of like where the grill's going because I feel like it's going more into a bow tie shape.
Yes.
Like less beaver tooth, more bow tie.
That's correct.
The kidney grill hasn't been around for years. Let's just be honest. Now it's like a sort of a cutesy bow tie, which
Right.
hey.
But even if it's a kidney, the kidneys should be horizontal, not vertical. You know?
Hey, that's actually authentic. If you look at old BMWs, they had big vertical.
Really?
Yes. Start to look. I gotta
did not
look
know
it up.
that.
The oldest BMWs have big vertical grills that you can see the lineage here. There is a connection.
All right, let's talk about Chris Bryant's opinion piece, which is really a story of a Chinese billionaire who started Geely and now has collected a ton of brands some of which he wants to bring to market, even here in the U.S., not in terms of just selling the vehicles, but also listing his stock. And he's finding a lack of investor interest, let's say, or less investor interest than he may have expected.
Yeah.
I was shocked by the amount of brands that Geely owns. I knew that they own Volvo.
Sure. Which includes Polestar.
Which includes Polestar, because Volvo owns like half of that.
Yep.
I knew that they had a minority stake in Daimler, in Mercedes.
And Mercedes and Aston Martin.
And they own Smart.
Yeah.
So I guess I
guess because of Daimler.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
Yeah, they must have bought it when they got that.
And then they have all those Chinese brands that we don't even know the names.
Like one's called Fleeker or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Zeekr,
Yeah.
I think it is. They also own the Lotus brand.
I think I knew that, but I forgot. I never think about it.
Well,
I never think about
the Lotus brand has been owned in Asia.
Everybody.
Yeah, by a lot of people, but it's been in Asia for a while, I think. I thought it was Malaysian, but now, now
the
Geely
point
owns
is,
it.
this is a lot. I mean, it does feel like they are going for Volkswagen in terms of owning a very wide portfolio of brands.
Yes.
You know, is this world domination attempt?
I mean, it seems like they're trying that, but I'm not sure if any of those brands really goes for it. So Volvo, for example, I've always been a lover of Volvos.
Love it. Yeah.
My first car was a 240 wagon in baby blue. You know.
Oh, that's so cool.
We called it the Blue Swede because
Is
we
that
lacked any kind of originality or creativity.
Is that what your parents got you because it was very, very safe? You know, that was like a high school car.
Well, that's what my parents got.
Okay.
That's what my mom got in 1984. And then when I started to drive in, I don't know, 1990.
Oh, you inherited.
Yeah. So
I love that.
I inherited that one, and then my brothers got it. We put 250,000 miles on that.
Wow.
But my parents have always had Volvos, both
Yeah.
of them. And so I've grown up with the brand. Lately, they've been doing some things that are annoying. Like, so they capped the speed. None of their cars are going to go more than 100 and I think 30 kilometers per hour.
I did not hear about
this. That was
this.
an announcement like 2 or 3 years ago. And I was talking to Håkon Samuelson, the CEO, about it. I was like, dude, do you not want to sell cars in Germany?
Yeah,
and he said, basically, they're the adults in the room is what they want to prove, you know?
Well, let's be honest. There are many portions of the Autobahn where you actually can't go fast.
True.
Those cameras are horrible, and it's worse than American highways where if you just think you're lucky, you're not going to get pulled over.
True.
It seems so unsporting.
There are ways around it. But yes, you're right.
So you're one of those guys that I always see like going, you know, you have to go a certain speed between the cameras.
Right.
But so I will do that. But then sometimes I do see people that are clearly going far faster than me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do they just not care about getting tickets? Or do they have a secret that I don't know about?
There are some ways to deal with those cameras. And there are some ways to deal with German tickets.
Okay, well, maybe I can't wait to hear more.
Supra-legal, let's say. Or maybe sub-legal. Anyway.
Spirit of the law.
I just thought it was a bad idea that Volvo did that. And now they've got these, 2-liter 4-cylinders in their hybrids, which are super boring motors in any car, even in not a hybrid.
But Volvo never cared about being boring. That is one thing we could say about
and
them.
they have amazing design. Like
they
the 240 I loved it.
I know.
And the XC90 that we have now, beautiful.
And there is the car with the most miles on it in the world is a Volvo.
I did not know that.
Oh, it was owned by Irv Gordon. He was a teacher, and he drove this Volvo back and forth to school for his entire career, and he would drive it all over the country, and his car ended up having over 1 million miles on it. It's like, it sets the record. I think it might have up to 3 million miles.
They're awesome. I just don't feel like they're fully going for it. The in-car technology isn't quite there. Polestar is another one where I feel like they had a great chance. They had an amazing first vehicle.
I know. I was so excited.
Yeah.
So excited. And it's completely...
It's underwhelming, I think.
Yes. I'm waiting. I'm like, guys, what is taking so long?
I feel like they want to be an Audi of EVs, but they're just not.
They're way too slow. And
Lotus hasn't done anything.
No, Lotus hasn't done anything.
Interesting.
No.
Yeah.
It's really a shame.
It's a brand that I feel like they had a chance to really take off. And there are some people, obviously, that love Lotuses, and there's some amazing Lotuses. I'm sure they're super fun to drive, the little lightweight. Speaking of lightweight cars, right?
Yeah.
But they had such a massive opportunity after James Bond drove one, and then Jason Alexander drove one in Pretty Woman. And I think Julia Roberts said,
let's
turns
be
like it's on rails.
honest.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I've driven some of the old ones. I've driven some of the new ones. They drive great. I mean, they drive very elementary, rudimentary, but that can be really fun. And there's such heritage. Like, they have the thing that all of these new brands won't have for another 50 to 75 years, which is heritage and history and story.
True. Colin Chapman.
Exactly.
Then apparently Geely has a brand in China that's top of the line, like Zeekr. That's
okay. I need to
supposedly at least aspirational, if not luxurious. Now, I was reading the story that Chris wrote, and I thought they'll never sell Chinese EVs over here.
Oh, I bet they will.
I realized they already do. Polestars that sell here are made in China.
Oh, well, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, anyway, great story. Check it out if you have a chance on Bloomberg.com, or if you're a Bloomberg client, just bio Chris Bryant for that. That's all we have time for today. But
what are you doing this weekend, Matt?
Being a dad again.
That's good.
For another weekend.
Yeah.
I'm preparing for Christmas,
Oh, you're going to have an American Christmas, aren't you?
My daughter's first American Christmas, because we usually spend it in Spain. And it's the first time that she's also like conscious. She's 3 going on 15.
It's a perfect age.
And so I am my wife is getting her like an easel and an apron, right? But I am, unbeknownst to my wife, just going to go all out and spoil the hell out of her.
I love it.
Going to get her like an electric Ducati that she can ride around the driveway,
Good. Start them young.
Not going to get her the little Bugatti, but that's very cool. It's like
how much does that cost? I was going to say, it's price of a normal car, really.
Yeah. It's very much fun, though, to drive. Even for me. You can catch us again, same time, same place next week. You can follow me, if you like, on Instagram at MattMiller1973.
And you can follow me on Instagram at Hannah Elliott XO. That's Hannah with an H on the end, and Elliott with 2 L's and 2 T's.
Thanks for listening. I'm Matt Miller.
I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Bloomberg.